Venezuela. A nation blessed with a staggering wealth, the largest proven oil reserves on the planet, but for decades, this blessing has felt more like a curse of foreign intervention, economic warfare, and a bitter internal struggle for the soul of the nation. Today, that struggle is reaching a boiling point. Behind the headlines of economic crisis and migration, a powerful US-backed movement is pushing for a radical solution: the full privatization of Venezuela's oil. The plan? To hand over control of this national treasure to American corporations. But this isn't just a story about oil, it's a story about control, global power, and a new 21st century blueprint for regime change. In this video, we will connect the dots between Washington's corridors of power, the ambitions of billionaires like Elon Musk, the shadowy world of cryptocurrency, and the ever-present threat of military intervention. This is the untold story of the war for Venezuela's future. Facing crippling economic sanctions and a collapsed oil industry, the Venezuelan government under Nicolas Maduro has been forced to make a difficult choice. In recent years, they have begun cautiously reopening their oil sector to foreign investment. The stated plan is simple: attract international capital and expertise, primarily from American companies, to revive production and turn Venezuela back into an energy powerhouse for the Americas. But there is a much more radical plan being pushed from the outside. Leading this charge is Maria Corina Machado, a US-funded far-right opposition politician. While the current government seeks managed partnerships, Machado and her allies are calling for a full-scale privatization, a wholesale transfer of Venezuela's state-owned oil company, PDVSA, into private and very likely American hands.
We must use all means necessary. And her rhetoric goes far beyond economic policy. Machado isn't just calling for reform. She has openly advocated for foreign military intervention against her own country's government. She frames this not as an attack on Venezuela, but as a liberation from a dictator, a narrative that aligns perfectly with the interests of those who wish to see a fundamental change in who controls Venezuela's oil.
To understand why this is such an explosive issue, we must go back to the era of Hugo Chavez. When Chavez came to power, he fundamentally reshaped Venezuela's destiny. He nationalized the oil industry, reclaiming it from foreign corporations like ExxonMobil and Chevron. The profits, which once flowed out of the country, were now used to fund social programs, education, healthcare, and housing for the poor. This move made Chavez a hero to the poor in Venezuela and across Latin America, but a sworn enemy in Washington and Wall Street. Since then, the United States has employed a multi-pronged strategy to destabilize the Venezuelan government: crippling economic sanctions, a powerful propaganda campaign, and unwavering support for opposition groups, including the one led by Machado. It's important to note that not all opposition leaders agree with Machado's extreme stance. More moderate figures, like former presidential candidate Enrique Capriles, have warned against this path. Capriles has explicitly stated that a US invasion would not bring freedom, but only pain and destruction for the Venezuelan people. This highlights a deep fracture within the opposition between those who seek a domestic solution and those who are willing to invite foreign powers to decide Venezuela's fate. So why does Washington care so much about one South American country? The answer is about more than just oil. It's about global dominance. Under Chavez and Maduro, Venezuela forged strong alliances with US rivals, notably China and Iran. Venezuela sends hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil to China, and it has received technical and economic support from Iran to bypass US sanctions. By gaining control of Venezuela's oil, the US could achieve several strategic goals at once. First, it would sever a critical energy and financial link for China. Second, it would isolate Iran in the Western Hemisphere. And third, it would give the United States unprecedented dominance over the global energy market, allowing it to set prices and influence economies worldwide. This is precisely why a figure like Maria Corina Machado is so valuable to Washington's plan. She is not just promising to privatize oil. She is promising to reorient Venezuela's entire foreign policy. She pledges to break ties with China, Russia, and Iran, and instead form a new right-wing alliance with pro-US governments across Latin America, effectively making Venezuela a geopolitical pawn of the United States. The vision being sold to American investors is audacious: to turn Venezuela into the Texas of Latin America. Far-right politicians and their lobbyists are promising massive, deregulated profits if U.S. corporations help fund the political push to take control of the country's natural resources, not just oil, but also gold, diamonds, and vast reserves of fresh water. And at the center of this sales pitch is a carefully crafted image of Maria Corina Machado. She is presented as a democratic champion, a freedom fighter, and there are even orchestrated campaigns to nominate her for the Nobel Peace Prize to lend her international credibility. But behind this image, her mission remains clear: to replace President Maduro with a puppet government that is completely subservient to Washington, even if achieving that goal means plunging the country into a bloody civil conflict. The Venezuelan opposition's alignment with Washington isn't just political, it's ideological. In a revealing interview with Donald Trump Jr., Machado didn't just criticize Maduro, she fully embraced the American conservative movement. She praised Donald Trump, and significantly, she voiced strong anti-Palestinian sentiments, echoing the far-right line in U.S. politics. This performance was a clear signal to her backers in the U.S. She is a reliable ally who will advance their foreign policy agenda on all fronts. She made it unequivocally clear that her goal is to topple Maduro with direct U.S. support, despite the fact that every previous U.S.-backed coup attempt in Venezuela has ended in failure and greater instability for the Venezuelan people. This isn't only about Venezuela. For powerful U.S. politicians, particularly far-right Cuban Americans like Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and former President Trump, Venezuela is the biggest domino in a line. Their ultimate goal is the total destruction of socialism in Latin America, which means regime change in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua, the three main governments that resist U.S. hegemony. Their strategy is consistent: use sanctions to cripple the economies of these nations, fund and promote opposition figures who promise privatization, and create conditions for either internal collapse or military intervention. The fall of Maduro would be a catastrophic blow to Cuba and Nicaragua, likely leading to their rapid collapse under renewed U.S. pressure. This is a project of recolonization, dressed up in the language of freedom and democracy. It's about rolling back decades of movement towards economic independence in Latin America, and placing the region's vast natural resources firmly back under the control of U.S. corporations. The tools for this modern-day takeover are more sophisticated than ever. Machado is reportedly working with U.S. neoconservative Congressman Mike Waltz. More strikingly, she claims to have the support of Elon Musk. Musk's Starlink satellite internet is a powerful political tool. In countries like Ukraine and Iran, it has been used to support factions favored by the West. In Venezuela, it could be used to bypass government-controlled internet and organize opposition forces. At the same time, there's a financial revolution underway that plays into this struggle. While figures like Trump and Machado may rail against government overreach, U.S. corporations are diving headfirst into Bitcoin, a decentralized currency originally meant to challenge the very financial system they represent. The Trump family has made millions from crypto investments. Most significantly, BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager and a titan of Wall Street, now controls nearly $100 billion in Bitcoin, possibly more than the anonymous creator, Satoshi Nakamoto himself. So we have a US-backed opposition leader supporting both the privatization of a nation's oil and a decentralized currency, while being supported by the ultimate symbol of corporate power. This isn't a contradiction, it's a new form of economic control, where corporate power co-opts anti-establishment tools for its own profit. As Venezuela stands at this crossroads, the question for the world is stark. Will it remain an independent nation, however flawed, navigating its own destiny, or will foreign powers and corporate interests finally succeed in deciding its future? This is more than a story about Venezuela. It's the untold side of a global fight for control. Control of energy, money, and ultimately, power. If you found this story eye-opening, help us share it. Like, subscribe, and share this video, because the story is still being written.